A valiant effort by CBS News to carry Tim Walz falls well short. Let's check it out. And welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. The future of MAGA is bright. Last night, the heir to Trump's dynasty put on quite a clinic. JD Vance was shockingly calm as he dismantled not just Tim Walz, but two moderators who clearly loathe his political brand. This morning, even Politico admitting JD Vance stole the show. Last night was the last big moment before we vote. It was a very critical night for Tim Walz. Kamala Harris has been bleeding out in the swing states. The emptiness of her campaign, her incompetence as vice president, her clear inability to handle the scale of the job that she wants is growing more evident to voters every single day. They needed Vance to collapse last night. They needed Walz to thrive, and the exact opposite happened. Today, the media was in mourning.
JD Vance came to this debate to land a bunch of punches, and he did. The thing that really stood out to me was that Tim Walz did not seem prepared for it.
Vance definitely put forward his best version of himself yesterday. I was also struck that the Governor Walz he sort of took a pass on some what could have been some pretty devastating attacks.
It certainly wasn't a perfect debate from Governor Walz from a fact checker's perspective.
JD Vance showed himself to be a superior candidate.
That's just an objective truth.
Vance was calm and cool, extremely effective. The evening was surprisingly civil, which was a nice change for moderate voters out there. Vance dismantled our current government with a very casual but very serious tone. It started with the Middle East after Iran unleashed the largest ballistic missile attack in the history of the world against Israel earlier yesterday. Vance reminded Americans that the attack was funded courtesy of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration.
Vance led from that point, and it was never really close again, although CBS was certainly trying to help Tim Walz limp along. You probably rolled your eyes when the moderators decided to make the second question of the debate about climate change, using Hurricane Helene, of course, and the devastation in the Southeast to push a very obvious agenda. Here was the question.
Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change?
And if you think it was ridiculous as the second question of the debate, realize that if Iran had not bombed Israel yesterday afternoon, climate change and Hurricane Helene, but climate change was going to be the first question of last night's debate. Think about that. They wanted Tim Walz to gain confidence and cruise to victory, just like they did with the last debate with Kamala and Trump, putting abortion as the second question. But appropriately, the world that they have torched ended up screwing up their plans. After Iran and climate change, CBS then moved on to immigration from there, which you would have thought is a slam dunk for JD Vance, right? After Kamala and Joe Biden invited the world to raid our country. But CBS found a way to thread the needle for Kamala's campaign again with a question that totally ignored Joe and Kamala's traitorous decimation of our southern border and focused solely on how mean it is to send millions of illegal immigrants home, which is, by the way, something a majority of Americans want.
Your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil?
all of the immigration chaos that you have seen for the last 3.5 years, and that was the immigration question. How can you send all these people home? That's so mean. Naturally, Vance redirected this politically charged question back to the actual immigration disaster that we're all suffering from in every city, in every town in the whole country. Vance mentioned Springfield, Ohio as an example, a city of 60,000 that's been decimated by a flood of tens of thousands of Haitian migrants. And even though CBS said that they weren't going to be fact-checking this debate, Margaret Brennan could not resist trying to marginalize JD Vance's claims about Haitian asylum seekers. It was a decision that she would quickly regret. Here it was.
Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you,
Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn now to the economy. Thank you,
Margaret. The rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years.
Thank you, Senator.
They eventually clipped his mic off so that he couldn't explain it any better. They rudely tried to shut up a U.S. senator as he decimates a fact check after they promised there would be no fact checks. It was a devastating moment for the host. It was the best moment of the night for JD Vance. And try as they might, there is just no way to save Kamala Harris from her culpability for the southern border, something that Jim Acosta actually learned today on CNN.
That 13,099 murderers were let into this country, 16,000 rapists, 425,000 people in the last 4 years have been let into this country by Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's own Customs and Border Protection that are running around this country, Jim.
The other thing, too, it's Kamala Harris. I don't know. Why do you guys say Kamala? That is, it's Kamala Harris.
Why is it false, Jim? If the government's own data says that, CBP's own data put this out last week. So why do you say it's false if the government put out? By the way, this is the Biden-Harris administration who put it out.
The government also says border crossings are down.
But Jim, you just said that was a false number. How do you get to that? What data do you have that says Customs and Border Protection is wrong?
Yeah. I also want to ask you about something that Trump said.
Jim Acosta has nothing he can say. He just is wrong. He's lying, which is what he does all the time. He's just not used to getting called out on it. And one last highlight from last night, maybe you were surprised when CBS unexpectedly called out Tim Walz on one of his many lies. Of course, it wasn't his most damaging liability that they called out, which is abandoning his National Guard unit right before they were deployed to a war zone. CBS, of course, called out a much less risky claim that goes back 35 years. Evidently, Tim Walz often says he was in China during the Tiananmen Square protests, when in reality he was in the United States in the state of Nebraska. Now, we quickly realized the reason that CBS went after Walz for a relatively lame false claim was so that they could just turn right around in the next minute and absolutely hammer JD Vance over his past very harsh criticisms of Donald Trump. It's the kind of passive partisan bias we see from the media all the time. Little thing at Walz and then just kaboom on JD Vance. Ironically, Walz ended up struggling mightily with a mildly tough question, and JD Vance handled answering for one of his biggest political liabilities perfectly. Take a look.
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests, went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people.